Hey, welcome to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Our prayer today is that God would speak to your heart and He would change your life as you listen to this message. So sit back, open up your heart, your mind, and your ears, and let God speak to you today.
Good to see you. Glad you're here. Ever feel like a dog chasing its tail? You ever watched a dog chasing its tail? You ever seen a dog chasing its tail? Some of y'all are waiting for you to wake up, but I don't know. I guess there's been times in my life that I was just bored enough that I thought it was funny to spend time watching a dog chase its tail. Just kind of. In fact, if the dog quit chasing his tail, I would grab the dog, put the tail back in his mouth, and kind of get it going again, you know. Maybe even call some folks around to watch. Hey, watch this. This is funny stuff. Sometimes our lives feel that way. Have you ever, to put it this way, have you ever been on a trip and you got on a curve, and it just seemed like it lasts forever? I mean, you start in this corner and it just keeps on going, and finally you're like, if this corner doesn't end pretty soon, we're going to be where we started. You know, just I'm about to be where I started out. I think that sometimes life feels like we're just going in circles. And why is it that when we're lost, we go faster? You ever thought about that, guys? When your wife says to you, "Are you lost?" "No." And so you start driving like 85 and 90 because there's something in our mind that says, if I go faster, then I'll not be lost as long. I'm lost now, but I'm going to drive out of this. And when we find ourselves in life in one of those corners, we feel like we're moving fast and everything is urgent and it's very stressful, but we don't even know where we're going. We don't get it. You know, our story today is about a group of people who lived that way for about 40 years. 40 years they spent waiting on a curve. And these were the people that the Israelites who God had sent Moses to lead out of bondage. He promised them a land that flowed with milk and honey. Now, I've been there, and they don't have any waterfalls that flow with milk, and honey doesn't just run down the trees. But it is a land, when you've been there, you begin to understand the land flowing with milk and honey. The food is unbelievable, just crazy. The vegetables and the breads and all that. Everywhere you look, it's fertile. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. Rich, fertile place. And this was what God had said to them. I have a promised land for you. And I'm going to lead you to that place. Right now you've been in this slavery, you've been in this bondage, but I'm going to lead you out of that place into this place of promise. It seems like now for several weeks, without intentionally doing so, I've been preaching a series of messages about people pretty much finding their next place or their destiny in life. It feels like that's what we've been talking about, is the promise God's given us and how we get to it. And here's yet another one of those days that we're going to talk about how it is that we wait on that curve when we find ourselves having received the promise. And that's where some of you are today. I heard the Lord at one point in my life. I know that God said something to me, but I feel like I've just been in the midst of a 20-year curve on this road, and I haven't been able to get to the promised land, and I don't know what's going on. Am I talking to anybody? If I'm talking to you so far, say amen, so I know at least I'm not. Okay, I know I'm not talking to myself. Now, God sent Moses to lead these folks out of Egypt and bondage, but it turned out that several of these people were never going to leave slavery even if they left Egypt. because they chose to remain in bondage to negativity, doubt, bad attitudes. And because of those people who decided to stay in that place, they caused all of the other folks to get slowed down considerably from receiving their promise too. The story is in Numbers chapter 13. And I'm going to point some things out to you today. And by the way, I have a pointer. And let me show you real quick what it looks like so I don't get shot. I'm going to be doing some of this. So when you see this going on, you know, we're about to find out who all's carrying today. Just as soon you know right now, it's just me with a pointer. I did try it out on Warren before church in front of Keith DeLau, who both of them work on the safety team. I just wanted to see what kind of reaction I would get from a distance if I put the light right there on Warren. And he's a police officer, so he didn't enjoy it as much as I did. But neither did Keith, who's the director of our security, but I kind of had fun with it for a minute. Numbers chapter 13. I'm jumping ahead in the story a little bit, but I'll come back to here. But in Numbers 13, Moses sends 12 people from representing the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. He sends them into the promised land because still yet they're wandering at this point. But he sends these 12 in. He says, up here north is where we're going. I want you fellas to go check it out and come back and bring us a report. And so the guys go up, they look around, they come back, and they say, sure enough, this is a beautiful, fertile, amazing place. We would love to be able to live there, but we can't because there's giants there, and we're afraid, basically is the report. And the report wasn't just negative to Moses and the leadership, but 10 of those 12, now 2 of them, came back and said, we can do this. It's a beautiful place. God said it's ours. Yes, there's giants there, but we'll defeat them. We can do this. 10 of them came back with a negative report, and they spread that negativity throughout probably around 3 million people. This is how many of them are out there. So 10 people negatively influenced 3 million people in such a way that those people became so discouraged and negative that God said, I'm not going to be able to give this promised land to these kind of people. Now I want to show you something. Numbers 14 verse 32. Here's what God said to these people when they came back and when they negatively influenced all the rest and all the ones who had been negatively influenced. Here's what God said to them. You will die here in the desert. Your children will wander around in the desert 40 years, suffering because of your sins, until all of you are dead. And I will cruelly punish you every day for the next 40 years, 1 year for every day that the land was explored. Verse 35, you sinful people who ganged up against me will die here in the desert. I've never thought about God feeling that way, like he was ganged up on. God said, so many of you got together and were so negative and complained and talked so much trash that I feel like you ganged up on me here in this desert. Verse 36, 10 of the men sent to explore the land had brought back bad news and had made the people complain against the Lord. So he sent a deadly disease that killed those men, but he let Joshua and Caleb, the only 2 that were positive, he let them live. So just those 2, plus all of the young people, because it was everybody who was 20 and under who would be allowed to go in. Everybody else, guys, I'm telling you, all the rest of them had gotten infected. That's the only way I can put, the only word I can use. The rest of the people had become infected by the negativity and the lack of trust and the complaining. Thus began a life of living on the curve. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. You know, all my ministry life, I have preached about these children of Israel wandering in the desert for 40 years. But I think I found something in the Word this week that has changed my mind on how I'll probably talk about that from now on. There's a difference between wandering and waiting. All of the wimps wandered, but the warriors waited. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. We have a map of Israel. I want them to put that up for me. And I'm going to point some things out to you here today. And this isn't a history lesson. It's not the opportunity for you to go to sleep. I'm not going to get you bored. But you guys have got to visually see something here. This is a map that shows the route of the Israelites. They started off, if I could get this thing to work. There it is. There it is. They started off right in here. This is Egypt. And right here is the Red Sea. And right about here is where they crossed it. Okay? Now I want you to notice something. See this? This is the Great Sea. This is a trade route. Right up here, right about there, I can't hold my hand still and talk at the same time. Right about there is Jericho. Jericho is the first place that the Israelites are going to take over when they go into the land of promise. Are you still with me? This, from here to here and across to there, they could have traveled on this route right here. It's an established trade route. They could have used this trade route and then crossed right here to Jericho, 240 miles. Now that sounds like a long distance, but this right here is a whole lot more than 240 miles. 240 miles, you do the math. Let's say they go 20 miles a day. They would have made that journey that took them 40 years in 12 days. Now, why did God not lead them this way? Why didn't God lead them this way? Because he knew that they were going to encounter some enemies that they were not prepared to fight. So out of protection, there's 3 million of them, but they're weak at this point. They've been in bondage and slavery for 400 years. So God is not going to lead them through the land of their fiercest enemies until they've had an opportunity to kind of get their feet under them, which is a good spiritual lesson to those of us who have not been serving the Lord all that long. This is the reason why when you become a believer that we don't throw you right back out to the wolves. You got saved, you trusted Jesus, okay, here's what we want you to do. Run to the bar tonight and tell all your... No, we don't do that to you. This is a season, even though it might require you to live on the curve a little while, there is a season that needs to happen of maturity in your life so we don't put you in that position to fail. Neither does the Lord, symbolic of this picture. Now, in this group of 3 million people, you have to keep in mind, not everybody is 20 and under. In fact, only a few relatively in 3 million are 20 and under. The majority of this group are either elderly or babies. They have people with them that are ill. They have people with them that are in every stage and season of life. So, yes, for those of you that are 25, 30 and under, you're thinking 20 miles a day for 12 days is nothing. Probably would not have been a big deal. I'm sure I'm with you on that. Years ago, I did a 26-mile thing one day walking. And I know it took a long time to walk 26 miles in a day, but you know, you could do it. But had they even just gone 10 miles a day, you do the math. How long would it have taken? Who's smart here? Had they gone 10 miles a day, 240 miles. I don't care how you do the math, it wouldn't have took 40 years. Am I right? But I want you to see something else. They make this huge curve. And then when they get up, this is Kadesh Barnea. Look what they do up here. They go up here and they just kind of wander around these Seir mountains. They're just kind of wandering around. But I want you to see something. Before we get to here, it took to get from here across the sea and all the way down to Mount Sinai, it only took a few months. At Mount Sinai, they stopped there for almost a year. They stayed there for 10 months. They stopped right here at Mount Sinai because this is where Moses received the 10 Commandments, which was a whole lot more than 10 Commandments, but that's what we know as. This is where Moses went on the mountain. He received the instructions from God. This is also where Moses received the instructions to construct the tabernacle. So this was not wasted time. For those of you that are saying, what about the cloud? What about following by the cloud and the pillar? Yes, there was, like 7 days and 16 days and 49 days and all that. I mean, they're moving all the way through here. But when they get right here, they're here for about a year. And that's why they're there. They're learning how to build the tabernacle. They're learning what needs to take place from this point on, okay? They make this journey from here to here and all the way to here. Are you ready for this? In less than 2 years. Now, if you're looking at how this thing goes, it goes up here and around, then down and up. They made it all the way to here, stay about 10 months, and all the way up here. And this is where they're camping. They've made it all the way from here to here in 2 years. At this point, everybody with me, wave. At this point, right here, after 2 years, is where Moses says to the 12, go on up north, right up in here, because this is the promised land, right? Starts right in here and it's going on up. So from here he says, okay, we're camping here. You boys run on up there, go on up into the promised land, check it out and come back. So they've only been at this for about 2 years, a little bit less than 2 years. The guys go up, check it out. Everybody's sitting on Geo. Right? We got a promised land. We've got a destination. And the 12 come back and 10 say, can't do it. And all the people start complaining and whining. And what might have been, because from here on up only takes about a year, what might have been 3 years, you're already ahead of me. They spend 38 years right here wandering around in circles, waiting for the whiners to die. Wow. It's what I call waiting on the curve. Just waiting on the curve. And they're all whining. They get up here and they start getting quail and manna and they're mad about it. They're sick of it. They want to go to Outback. They want to go to Marketplace. But this is it. I mean, why are we going this? Why aren't we going that way, Moses? God didn't say to. Okay, we'll bear with you. Let's get across this Red Sea. They're trying to kill us right here. Let's get across. All right, we'll wait on you while you get your stuff, but come on, let's hurry. Let's go. We've been here a year. All right, now we're ready. You guys go up here and check it out. They're back. Okay, let's go, Moses. No, we can't go because they're all a bunch of wimps and whiners and complainers. So we're just going to wander around stinking waste. 38 years! Wow. That help you understand that a little bit better? Now, that's why I said a little while ago what I said. The warriors weren't wandering because they knew exactly where they were going. But they're just waiting on the wimps to die so they can go. There's a big difference between wandering and waiting. I want you to notice something else, and I'm going to move on. All of this time, here's your homework assignment. All of you theologians and Bible scholars, I want you to prove me wrong. I want you to find me something written in the Bible about what happened right here. You can find me stories all through here. Find me something that happened right there. 38 years silence because nothing significant happened worth writing during that time. Was it just wasted time? Was everybody being punished? No. You got to understand something. The warriors, the ones who were waiting on the promise, the ones that were positive that God had given the ones that were hanging on and clinging to the promise, they weren't being punished. I want you to hear this. They weren't wasting away, even though it seemed like the time was wasteful. While they're there, they're collecting resources. In a minute, you're going to see why they need them. While they're there, they're hanging around and they're collecting resources, but it's really a blessing. They're being given a blessing because they're not going to have to go to war and try to take their promise with a bunch of negative, complaining wimps tagging along behind them like an albatross around their neck. That's a blessing, even though it seems like wasted time. Some of y'all are way smarter than me. You already ready to preach this message, aren't you? You're like, I know where he's going. Get away from me, you negative sucker. I'm tired of you keeping me out of my promise. So the first thing to do is to determine which one are you? Are you a wanderer or are you a waiter? Because if you're a waiter, your promise is still coming. And the thing that the wanderers didn't even understand, the promise came in spite of them. They just didn't get to go in. The promise was still right where God had said it was going to be. The warriors went in. The wimps didn't get to go in, but the wimps still knew it was there. They just didn't have the fortitude to believe God, to trust God. After all God had done for them, feeding them, bringing them water in a desert. 3 million people living in one wilderness. See these? One wilderness to the next. One wilderness, one desert to the next. 3 million people wandering around out here with nothing. And God is raining down quail and manna on them. He's raining it down on them. And they're said that they got so sick of eating quail that even while it was still between their teeth, they started complaining about it. And God's like, you bunch of wimps, bunch of negative suckers, I can't do nothing with you. Now, there's something else you guys have got to see though. I know this is getting a bit boring for you, but I don't mean it that way. I want you to see this and I'm going to move on. I want you to add up the time from here all the way to here, 707 days. Here, just here, 13,590 days. From here, back over to hit the path and up into the promised land, 609 days once they've decided to go. That's a total of 14,906 days. And if you divide that, that is a total of 40.8 solar years. It is 497 months. 497 months, but I want to tell you what the spiritual meaning, because in Israel, numbers have more meaning than just numbers. There's a spiritual significance to numbers. The spiritual number 497, are you ready for this? Means glory to God in the highest. Here's what happened. God took a riotous rabble of people who, once he was finished whittling them down, became a disciplined, devoted, conquering army of warriors He took a group of people who, once he got them whittled down to being who they needed to be, he was able to say about them, now these are the kind of people that bring glory to me in the highest. That's some good stuff right there, whether you like history or not. Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 1. Moses is recounting this situation. He said, right here, we spent many years wandering around outside the hill country of Seir. 38 of them, in fact. We spent many years until the Lord said, Moses, Israel has wandered in these hills long enough. Turn, go north, and give the people these orders. Be very careful, because you will soon go through a land that belongs to your relatives, the descendants of Esau. They're afraid of you. Don't start a war with them. I've given them the hill country of Seir. I'm not going to give it to you, even though you haven't, not even enough to set a foot on. And as you go through their land, you're going to have to buy food and water from them. The Lord has helped us, in verse 7, has taken care of us during the past 40 years that we have been in this huge desert. Listen, the Lord has helped us and taken care of us during these past 40 years that we were in this huge desert. We've had everything we needed, and the Lord has blessed us and made us successful in whatever we have done. So even during 38 years of what seemed like wasted time, their testimony after that is over, the warriors are saying, the Lord has helped us and taken care of us. We've had everything we needed. He's blessed us. He's made us successful in whatever we did. That is a positive attitude when you're waiting on the curve. 38 years. We didn't get to go 38 years, but this is my take on it. God, you've been good to us. You blessed us. You provided us. I hadn't seen my promise yet. I hadn't got to go in yet, but everything I've needed, you've taken care of. I'm better off than I was back then. I've lost 38 years, but it's all right, Lord. You're the one that gives the promise. You know when I'm going in. I'm better than I was. I'm still hanging with you. It's all good. And God says, glory to me in the highest. I can use that kind of an attitude. Now, there's always application. Some of you are like, okay, I love the history lesson, but how does that apply to me? Here it is. You ready? Get your pen. Get your paper. Here's the application. Anybody in the room waiting on the curve right now, say amen. You're waiting on the curve. Pastor, I'm living on the curve, man. I love the Lord. I'm positive about it. I'm going to serve Him, and I won't quit. But, man, I've been on the curve a long time. I'm ready to get off the curve. I want to get from here to there. I just want to get to there. I'm ready to get there, Pastor. How's this going to happen? When the time is right, God is going to provide you with three things, and they're found in the verses I just read to you. Number one is found Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 3. When it is time for you to finally leave Kadesh Barnea, there it went. But when it's time, it's right in there somewhere. When it's time for you to leave there, God is eventually going to say something to you. Here's what He said to Israel. He said, turn and go north. Now, my map isn't up anymore, and it's okay, because you saw it long enough to remember what's going on. This is Kadesh Barnea right here. Right there. I'm pretty close. This is the trail right here to get up to where they need to go. Looks like they're backtracking. I don't know whether they did all this. This is what it's showing, that they came all the way down here to Eloth, but they could have, I guess they could have cut across. But in any case, they're going to get on this path right here. And God says, at this point, He says, turn. See there? Turn and go where? Go north. And at that point, I want you to notice something. Even though there's a couple of little jags through here to get around some of this water and some of these mountains, it's still pretty much a straight shot north. A whole lot more straight than what all this was. Am I right? God said to Moses on that day, you've wandered out here long enough. Turn and go north. The first thing God is going to do for you when he's ready for you to begin to enter your promised land is he's going to give you clear direction. God didn't say, leave here and wander around a little bit. That's what he never did that their whole time. The whole time he was telling them, go here, go there, go there, go there, go there. It looked like it was a drag, but he always was giving direction. At this point, God gives clear direction as to where the promised land is. Here, it's time to go, so God is going to give clear direction. You've wandered in the hills long enough, turn and go north. Number 2, he says, stay on course. It's going to look this way. When the time is right, God's going to provide you, number 1, with clear direction. Number 2, with detailed instructions. He says, stay on course. Look at Deuteronomy 2, verse 4. Give the people, it's talking about the Israelites, said, give the Israelites these orders. Be very careful, because you're about to go through land that belongs to your relatives. They're already afraid of you. Don't start a war with them. I've already given them that land. Leave them alone. That's basically what he's telling them. So he's giving them detailed instructions. How does that apply to you? First of all, he's giving you clear direction. Okay, it's finally time to turn and go north. I'm heading north. Second thing he says, here's your detailed instructions. Don't jack around with the stuff on the sides. Don't start wars over here. Don't get into battles over there. Don't listen to that person and follow there. Don't chase rabbits over there. Here's your direction. Get your focus. And thirdly, God will provide you with ample resources. Look at verse 6. And as you go through their land, this is the part we don't want to hear most of the time. You will have to buy food and water from them. There's no free ride to Jericho. Well, I've been serving the Lord, and he been feeding me quail and manna. I don't intend to start paying for nothing now. I don't want to pay my tithe. I don't want to pay my tithes and give my offerings. I don't want to serve in the church and use the gifts that God has given me. I don't want to. I'm busy, Pastor. I'm not like you. I'm busy. I don't have time to be involved in taking the promised land. I just want to go. I'm good with the turn north. I'm good with the stay focused. Somebody pay for this. I'm ready to get mine. I am preaching today. You don't get yours without paying. Why? Well, you need to be a part. You need to have responsibility on this. You need to be a part of what God is doing. But there's more to it than that. There's more to it. I want you to see this. He says you're going to have to pay your dues. You're going to have to sacrifice and pay your own way. And don't complain about it. Why? Look at verse 7. Moses reminded him. Here's why, guys. The Lord has helped us. He's taken care of us for 40 years we've been out here. We had everything we needed. He's blessed us. He's made us successful in everything we've done. God's given us all these resources. All this time that we were sitting around up here in Kadesh Barnea, God was giving us the resources so that when it came time to go north, we'd have the money to pay our way. We don't have to go through there and do our buddies wrong and steal their stuff. We don't have to take advantage of everybody. We don't have to let somebody else do it for us. We don't have to let somebody else pay the way. We can do it because God gave us a job. Because God gave us income. Because God gave us a bonus. Because God gave us a raise. Because God gave us talent. Because God gave us ability. Because God gave us vision. I'm telling you, if we had a real preacher, it should be something today. You're going to have to pay your way. If you're that person living on the curve, there's coming a day where God's going to say to you, you've gone through these mountains long enough. I've had you on the curve. You learned what you needed to learn. You didn't like it, but you stayed positive. You stayed with me. You hadn't complained. I'm still taking you to where I said I was going to take you. It's time now. I'm giving you clear direction. Now it's time. Go north. Stay focused. Get ready to sacrifice. I'm going to tell you something. As a leader, I have learned this lesson so many times. I never ask you. I learned this the first time when I was a 19-year-old kid working in a grocery store, and they put me in charge of, they put me as the manager over all of the other, I was like the third in charge at 19 over this whole grocery store. And most of the people that I had were boys that were my age and a couple years younger that were stockers. And those boys worked for me. But they didn't work for me, they worked with me. I learned as a young man that if we could work together, if we could share, if they could have the victories. I didn't need the victories, I just wanted to win the war. They could have all the battle glory, I just want to win the war. I learned a long time ago, share the victory, share the glory, let them all have all that. But don't ever ask people to do what you won't do yourself. Don't ask people to do what they haven't seen you do yourself. And so every way along this line for me, I've had to do this. Every time in my life where God said to me, I'm thinking specifically back to when the fire came. And man, I really struggled at that point. I was like, okay, God, I am not going to be one of those pastors that builds this big building and has all this debt and then leaves these people. I'm not going to be that guy. God, if I make this commitment, I'm asking you to help me, but if I make this commitment, I'm not leaving these folks with this debt. I'm not leaving this to some other pastor to come in here and not be able to hire staff because he's saddled with so many financial burdens. I'm not that guy. So Lord, if you want us to build this building, then tell me, because I guess I'm going to be here a while. I need you to tell me that I'm going to be here a while, because I can't do that to people. And the Lord gave me direction. Go north. Because there were a lot of people, guys. There were a lot of folks at that time, or I won't say a lot, but there were a few. You know, we had a little insurance check. They gave us an insurance check. Have you ever seen a check for $1.9 million? They sent us a check for $1.9 million. We took a picture of it before we cashed it. Never held one in my hand like that before. But 1.9, I knew wasn't going to do it. 1.9 was what we get if we don't rebuild. And some people said, hey, let's just sit in the gym. We got $1.9 million. Bulldoze that mess, sit in the gym, hang on to that 1.9, let it earn interest, and then we get enough money together, we'll build that building debt-free. But that wasn't what the Lord wanted us to do. How do I know that? Because that's only been 11 years ago, and we've been debt-free now for 2 years, completely debt-free for 2 years. And the miracle wasn't a $1.9 million miracle. It was a $4.6 million miracle, because that's what we needed to do everything. And we could have sat down and gotten easy and comfortable and sat on those metal chairs over there, and you wouldn't be here now. Because after about 8 or 9 months, folks weren't sitting on them then. They got tired of it. We was waiting to get that building done so we could get in these seats. These seats are better than the folding metal chairs. I promise you. Sat on both. God didn't want us to take our 1.9 and sit down. God wanted us to trust Him for this, which is now completely debt-free. In that amount of time, God at one point said to us, and not just me, but to our deacons. Our deacons they were an amazing group of guys that walked through that with us, and the staff. At one point when I was struggling, I'm sitting in the parking lot looking at a burned out shell, saying, I just don't know. We got 1.9. I don't want to go into debt. We're talking about 4.6. I don't know if God's going to let me I don't know what's going on. And at some point, the Holy Spirit said, He gave me the go north. But when He said go north, it was also stay focused. So we lasered in on that building and that campaign. And everything that campaign director told me to do, I did it religiously. He said, now some pastors don't do this stuff. If they don't do it, they don't get the money. I said, how much money are we going to raise if I do everything you tell me? He said, 100%. I said, I'm going to do it. And he looked at me like, nobody does 100%. I'm like, I don't want this debt. I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. You laser in like a focus on it, and then get ready to sacrifice, because then it came time to, how much are we going to ante up and build this building for? I've never told this, and I guess it's okay now all these years later. It wasn't a huge amount. There was some that gave more than Deb and I, but if you know how much pastors make, the Lord said to me in 3 years' time, He said, give $20,000. So Deb and I gave $20,000 within 3 years, above our tithes and offerings toward this. It was sacrificial. It was sacrificial. I don't know what y'all know about having teenage kids, but when you got 2 teenage kids, you got 4 cars, you got 4 car insurances, you've got 4 cars to keep gas in. They got activities, and one of them was getting married and trying to take them on a missions trip and all these kind of things. I mean, you have all that going on. I'm telling you, we literally lived through the breaking of the bread and the fish. We literally saw it with our eyes. So I said to a great friend of mine, I never would have shared it with anybody else, but I shared with him, I said, this is what's going on. And he said, how in the world are you guys making it? And I said, I don't know. I said, I do the math and it does not make sense. We cannot afford to do what we're doing. We can't do it, but we are. And it cost us. It was a sacrifice. It was 18, 20-hour days. Some of y'all remember it. It was a major, major sacrifice to our family, to your families. But you don't enter the promise, and this was part of the promise. You don't enter the promise without sacrifice. I didn't even have it in my notes to tell you that story. I didn't even want to. I've never said it before. I'm only telling it now because I feel like there's too many people who think that God has made them a promise and they're just going to walk into it one of these days. You don't walk into the promised land without paying a price. The promise is there, but you're going to pay something. It's going to cost you. You're going to sacrifice. You don't just get to walk in. Somebody else is not just going to do it for you. If God gave you the promise, then you're going to have to get direction from Him, stay focused, and get willing and ready to sacrifice. It may be your money, it may be your health, it could be all kinds of things that you're going to pay the price with. So when's it going to happen, Pastor? I don't know the answer to that for sure, but this is the conclusion. I know you're ready. Deuteronomy 2:14 says all this we're talking about was 38 years after we left Kadesh Barnea. By that time, all the men who had been in the army had died, just as the Lord had said they would. The Lord kept getting rid of them until finally none of them were left. But something happened. You just dropped down a few verses. Moses is recounting this. Something happened. After all of them died, after all the negative was out of the way, after all the whine and complaining, after all that was gone, there finally came a point where God said, okay, now it's time. Okay, we're ready. You got what you need now. You got your money, you got your resources, you got your experience, you got your leadership, everything you need. We're ready to turn, go north, stay focused, sacrifice, and walk into the promised land. And look what happened in verse 25. This is it. God said to him, today I will start making all other nations afraid of you. They will tremble with fear when anyone mentions you, and they will be terrified when you show up. That's a pretty cool conclusion to the story about how God took care of His promised people. The message is this to you. Waiting on the curve won't last forever. It may seem like it, guys. It may seem like you're never going to get off this curve. Can you imagine 38 years wandering around in circles up around the Mount Seir? For what? Every day you get up and you're thinking, why are we doing this? Why? God, you told me that relationship was going to be healed. Why has it been 20 years? God, you told me those kids were going to get their lives right. Lord, 5, 6 years ago, you told me that, and they're still living like the devil. Lord, you told me that if I would trust you and you would supply all my needs. And why in the world is it, God, that here I am after years of testing you and being faithful with my giving in every area of my life, and I'm still struggling just week to week. I don't even know how I'm going to pay my... Why is that, God? Why am I living on that curve? How long am I going to be on that curve? How do I get off this curve, God? Oh, that would be a wonderful message. It would be a great book. I wish I knew the answer to how you get off the curve and when it's going to end. I wish I could preach you that one. There are people out there who probably will attempt to and write a book and make lots of money. But I'd be afraid of being a false prophet. I don't know when you're getting off the curve. I didn't put you on it. I don't know what negativity you're fighting on that. I don't know the circumstances of your situation. I don't know. All I know is what the Word says. All I know is that the Word says that if you are a warrior and not a wimp, if you're the warrior who is waiting and not the wimp who's wandering, if you're the warrior who's clinging to the Word of God and the promise of God and positivity and saying, I believe you, Lord, regardless of what it looks like. I may be getting old right now and I haven't seen come to pass, but I'm still hanging on. If that's you, here's what the Word says. Someday, one day, God's going to say to you, you wandered around these hills long enough. Turn north. Stay focused. Get ready to sacrifice. But you're going to walk into your promise. That's not my word. How many warriors do we have in the room right now that are waiting on the curve? Stand to your feet. You say, it's me, man. I'm a warrior. I'm positive. I know what the Lord has said to me. I'm not going to turn. I'm clinging to the promise He's made it. But I'm telling you right now, I feel like I'm just living in the middle of the curve, and the curve just doesn't seem to be coming to an end. I can't see the end of the curve. I can't see around this mountain. I don't know. You know what it was like up there in the mountains of Seir? Right up around there. Remember, you know what it was like up there? You know what it looked like every day for 38 years? Mountains and desert. 38 years you get up. What's changed? Nothing. Still the same mountains, still the same desert. Still the same quail. Still the same manna. Nothing's changed. Difference is, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to become the person that just gets bitter and angry and complains and whines until God says, I'm not going to get any glory out of you. There's no glory in the highest out of you. I'm going to have to wait for you to die out. Or are you going to be the one who says, God, I'm clinging to the promise. You made me a promise. I'm clinging to the promise. I will get to that promised land that you told me about. I will not falter. I will not fail. I will not quit. I will not back away. I will remember what God said to me, and I'm going to cling on to that. I'm going to hang on to that, and I'm waiting, and when my day comes, I'm going to be ready. But now I'm encouraged because I know the reason why I've been here was at least to be assimilating and accumulating what I was going to need when it's time to go. So, God, I'm encouraged. Lift your hands. Everybody stand and lift your hands. Lift your hands up. Surrender. Just lift your hands and surrender. See, if you have a hard time lifting your hands and surrender, it might be because you're angry at God. Tired of surrendering to God. I'm not lifting my hands. I don't want to lift my hand. I'm sick of this. God, we're trying. We are trying with everything that's in us. We are trying to be positive, to be sweet, to look like Jesus. Lord, the enemy's coming against us. He's lying to us every day. Sometimes it looks like the promise is even further away than it was before. But God, you said, you gave us a word. You gave us a promise. And we choose to cling to the promise over what the curve looks like. Lord, now I ask you right now, you look at all these folks standing, hands raised in surrender to you. I ask you right now this morning, Lord, that you would just let the word that you have given them today sink down real deep past their head, right down into the depths of their soul. Let this be that word of encouragement that we cling to. Let this be a day of crossroads in our life, one of those days we look back to. Lord, the next big thing that happens in our life, that promise that you bring us into, we look back and we say, oh yeah, I do remember back there in December of 2018, it looked pretty bleak, but the Lord reminded me of a word He'd given me, and I continued to hang on to it, and look where God has brought me today. God, help us. Help us. Help us, I pray. Only the strong survive the curves. Help us today, I pray, to be strong as we wait on the curve.
Hey, thanks again for stopping by our YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe right now so that you don't miss any of our sermons or any of our online content. And if you want to know more about Trinity Fellowship and everything that we have to offer, then go to our website at trinitynwa.com or hit us up on any one of our social media platforms at Trinity NWA. We hope to see you here soon.